up for the men and women of law enforcement. The other thing that he will do, and that what New York really needs to do, you need to stop coddling criminals. Stop turning them loose on the street. They'll commit a crime and they put them right back out. Stop releasing people early from prison. If you do crime, you must do the time. And we need to focus more on supporting the rights of the victims of crime and not be so concerned about the rights of the criminal. Lee Zeldin will not coddle these people. He will hold them accountable, and you will be safer as a result. Another thing I saw people complain when they came down, they were really upset, people in like New York City who moved to Florida, at the George Floyd riots that happened in 2020. And I can tell you, when that started going on in other places in this country, in Florida, I called out the National Guard immediately. I had people ready. We were not going to let our cities burn down. We were not going to let our businesses be destroyed. And I guarantee you, if Lee Zeldin were governor back when that happened, he would have done the same thing. He would have stopped that in its tracks. We've also, though, in Florida, and I would love to see him be able to get in and work with the legislature here to do it, we said, you know, you look at all the rioting that's going on. In Portland, they'll get arrested for rioting and they get their mugshot taken, they get a slap on the wrist and they get put right back on the street. And so in Florida, we say that doesn't work. If you're rioting, if you're looting, if you're engaging in mob violence, you're not getting a slap on the wrist, you're getting the inside of a jail cell. We're holding you accountable. We have a major problem in this country with rogue prosecutors who get into office, usually funded by people like George Soros, and they say they want to reimagine criminal justice. And their version of doing that is to just ignore duly enacted laws and to let criminals get away with crimes. You know, in San Francisco, they were letting them steal $999. If you didn't steal $1,000, they just wouldn't prosecute you. People get their cars broken into with nothing happening. People get assaulted. They have a prosecutor in LA. He doesn't prosecute the people. The women have to take off their jewelry just to go shopping in the middle of the day. So that is wrong. And in Florida, I can tell you, when we had a prosecutor who was not following the law, I removed him from his post. And I can't wait that when Lee Zeldin becomes governor, he is going to go to Manhattan and he is going to remove the district attorney in Manhattan. I'm also excited to see Lee as governor because this state needs better management. We need somebody who knows how to run these things. You know, I look at the comparison between Florida and New York, and obviously we don't even need to talk about taxes. You all know the difference in the taxes. We have one of the lowest tax burdens in the country. New York has one of the highest tax burdens in the country. But here's the thing, our budget in Florida, we're now, I think, 3 million more people than New York State has in Florida. And yet your budget is over twice the size of our budget in the state of Florida. But the question is how is that money being spent? Because I can tell you the New Yorkers that come to Florida, they say we have better services and we have better infrastructure in Florida. We also just had the results from the nation's report card for the grade, the comparison between the states on schooling. And Florida ranked number 3 in the nation for 4th grade reading and number 4 in the nation for 4th grade math. When I was a kid, we were a lot lower than New York. Now we're a lot higher. So again, where is all that money being spent? And I don't even need to get into the debt. New York has one of the highest per capita debt ratios in the country. We in Florida have one of the lowest. And so we know how to manage. They're not managing it well here. But Lee Zeldin will upset this apple cart. He's going to start holding these people accountable. And you see all the different you see all the different corruption and all this stuff. You need somebody to go in there and just clean house in Albany, and Lee's the guy to do that. And think about like responsiveness of government and having a leader that can actually get things done. We unfortunately in Florida last month, we had a massive hurricane come through our state and hit southwest Florida. Fort Myers and Sanibel and a lot of these areas got it really bad. It really went through the entire state and left the Atlantic Ocean, so it did a lot of damage. And the morning after the storm in southwest Florida, you saw a bridge to one of our islands called Pine Island, totally destroyed. And then you saw a causeway going to Sanibel Island. It was severed in 3 different places. And so the folks were telling the people who lived on those islands, get off the island, it's going to be 6 months to a year before this stuff is patched up. Well, those folks came to me, and it wasn't a state bridge or a state road or any of that. They came to me, they say, Governor, can you help us? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to help. We got to figure out what we can do. So we put our mind to it. We ripped through all the bureaucracy and all the red tape. We went down to Pine Island, and we fixed the bridge in 3 days. Now, if you believe your governor would have been able to fix a bridge in 3 days, I got some oceanfront property out in Arizona I would like to sell you. I don't think that would have happened here. We also have a situation where your governor believes in lockdown policies and in mandates. She believes it. And I think that if you look at how those policies were implemented in New York, those policies were destructive. You drove off a lot of people, you drove off a lot of businesses, and the way these restaurants were treated was unbelievable. A lot of those restaurants have moved to Florida or set up an outpost in Florida. So those were destructive policies. I don't think that she believes they were, and I know she believes in imposing mandates on the people of New York. In Florida, we do it much differently. Our policy is very simple. Nobody should have to choose between a job they need and a shot they don't want. And when they're imposing these, I mean, they literally wanted to fire nurses, cops, firefighters. These are people that have been working all through COVID. Now all of a sudden, and most of them had COVID, by the way. Most of them had natural immunity. CDC wouldn't recognize that, but the reality is, it is what it is. So they want to fire these people all of a sudden, and so we passed legislation to protect folks. And your governments here in the city, they wanted to send these people out. I think a lot of people did lose their jobs because we hired some of them, you know, in the state of Florida. And so that's wrong. And it's a violation of your freedom. It's also a total fraud. Those mandates were not based on medical science. They were engineered to force your compliance with their agenda, and that's it. And I know in Florida, and I know Lee Zeldin will protect this as well, but in Florida, we have prohibited schools from forcing COVID shots on the students. Not gonna happen. Your governor wants those mandates on the students and probably wants to put them in masks again, to be honest. You're starting to see, there's some article, I think in like one of these corporate media papers saying, you know, it's time to put masks back on again. And I'll tell you, there is no time for any type of mandates. And so if you have Lee as governor, he's going to put the kibosh on any attempt to impose medical mandates. You also need somebody like Lee as governor when it comes to the issue of education, because we saw how our students were treated in so many of these leftist jurisdictions over the last 2 years. We saw teachers' unions wanting to lock kids out of school for months and months and months, and even over a year in some instances, and that is wrong. And the school system is there to support the community. It's not there to supersede the rights of parents. You as parents have the right to have a fundamental role in the education of your kids. And the upbringing. Lee Zeldin understands that. We have a Parents' Bill of Rights in the state of Florida. You guys need to get one of those in New York. And parents want a school system that is focused on educating kids, not on indoctrinating kids. We don't have time for theories like critical race theory, which is teaching kids to hate our country or to hate each other and divide us on the basis of skin color. No, we want to have real history, and we want to teach American civics and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and understanding what it means to be an American. We also means that what's in school needs to be appropriate for young people. And we had a fight in Florida, over a bill where we just said very simply, you should be able to send your kids to elementary school without having things like gender ideology injected into the curriculum. It is wrong to teach these young kids that their gender is a choice or that they may have been born in the wrong body. We've drawn a line on the sand in the state of Florida, but I can tell you, you're seeing it all across the rest of the country. And the media didn't like when we did that. The left didn't like when we did that. We even had a big company that you may have heard of in Central Florida, Disney, that came out and tried to fight the bill. They usually get what they want, and really in Florida for probably 60 years they've gotten what they want. Not with this governor in office. You don't get what you want. We're going to do what's right for the people of Florida. And so we rejected that pressure, and we stood up for parents, and we stood up for kids, and we even just said, look, you can do your woke activism, but we're not going to subsidize it. So they had gotten a lot of subsidies, their own government, exemptions from law, tax breaks. So we worked with the legislature and said, Disney's not going to have its own government anymore. They're going to live under the same laws as everybody else, and they're going to pay their fair share of taxes in the state of Florida. So that is happening.
That's right.
Another thing we did in education is say that, and I have two daughters, our girls and our women athletes have a right to compete with fairness and with integrity. And when you have somebody competing on the men's team for 3 years, men, and then switches to the women's team and then quotes win the championship, you're taking away opportunities for girls and women athletes who have worked hard to be able to succeed. So we've signed legislation in Florida protecting women's sports, and I know Lee Zeldin will stand up for our women athletes in New York. If you think about it, a lot of what has been done in New York is really a facsimile of some of the problems we're seeing out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
You've had Biden come in, and what has he done? Has he made life better for anybody? Of course not. They cranked the printing presses, they borrowed money, they spent trillions and trillions of dollars, even though they were warned that this would spark inflation. They went to war on our own domestic energy industry. Now they're begging Maduro and OPEC for oil, but it means all of you are paying more for your energy needs. So we have the worst inflation we've had in 40 years with no end in sight, and one of the worst energy policies we've had. And what is their answer to this, to say they're going to give you relief? They pass a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act. So they think the way to tackle inflation is to hire 87,000 new IRS agents. I think every member of Congress that voted for those IRS agents should have to be audited every year by the IRS. And I think career politicians like Nancy Pelosi need to be retired with congressional term limits. That would make it a lot better. Honestly, if you're going to do 87,000 of something, I'd like to see 87,000 new Border Patrol agents to get that border under control. They don't seem to care about that that even though we've had millions of people come across illegally, even though the cartels are eating our lunch and making a fortune at the border, even though fentanyl is at record levels in this country and the overdoses are at levels we haven't seen. They don't care about that. They don't care about the criminal aliens that have come in. There have been over 90 terrorists, suspected terrorists, that came across in the last fiscal year. They don't care about that, but they get really upset if 50 of them are sent to Martha's Vineyard. Then they get upset. But I think with Lee Zeldin in office, when you talk about energy, New York and the western part of New York, you have massive amounts of natural gas potential. And yet, because of ideology, they're not letting it. That's jobs, economy, and it creates more energy security for you. So I like to see him get in there and unleash your own energy here in the state of New York. So I think this is an important choice for the state of New York. Do you want to continue down the path that you're on? A path that's seen you hemorrhage people, wealth, you name it, or do you want to try a different direction? Same old story, well, you have the power to turn the page. You have the power to elect Lee Zeldin as the next governor of the state of New York. You will roll with some changes, and this will be the 21st century version of the shot heard round the world. Let's get it done.